All right, so part two. Here we go. We sold the house. I sold the house there and proceeded to Oregon and Washington to look for another property. Um, Noticing that there, after spending a couple weeks on the road, 2 or 3 weeks on the road, I noticed that the property values were over what I could afford. I continued to search out property elsewhere and found some in Arizona. Continuing on south, we went through Utah, where I had noticed a piece of property out in Duchesne County that had been on the real estate market for some time. I went and purchased that property, and I will talk about the purchase of that property and the corruption that came along with that property in the past, and that seems to be a huge part of why things are the way they are today. So nevertheless, we are along the way. We ended up purchasing that property, lived in that property for a couple years, from 2013 to 2015. So in around July 12th, 2015, I was made aware by my children that their mother had hit them with shoes. Their legs were black and blue. Both of my children's legs were black and blue. I had removed my children from the home. I had left the house for 5 days. I stayed with my friend in West Jordan, Utah, where we would later return. Then 5 days later, I told my friend, I said, "Man, there's something really wrong. I feel like she's done something even worse." So I went back out there with the kids, brought the kids into the house, and I had the kids go upstairs because she was ranting and raving, yelling and violently, just being irritable and argumentative and violent in front of the children. So I just told them to go upstairs. And then during the conversation, she told my son to come downstairs, and my daughter followed. My daughter sat at the bottom of the stairs. She then proceeded to tell my son, she said, "When I was pregnant and you were in mommy's tummy, I beat my tummy to kill you because I never seen your face." I immediately told my children to get in the car, that we were going to leave. She tried to prevent me from leaving, but at that time she just admitted to attempted murder of my children, of my son, and I had to get away from that situation. She forced herself in the vehicle, in which at that time I proceeded to West Jordan, which was 2 hours away, to my friend's house. I got to West Jordan, placed my children in his house, and then along with myself, and then called the police, where the police showed up and advised the police of the incident. And the police asked me why it is that I wanted her gone so badly, and I told them that she just admitted to attempted a murder of my son, my unborn son, that she had deliberately beat her stomach to kill my son, and that she had hit my children with her shoe, and their legs are black and blue. I asked the officers to go in there and take pictures and interview my children, and at that point the officers refused, stating that they were not qualified to interview children, and they refused to take pictures of my children's bruises, and stated that, well, we'll just take her in on this current warrant. That's another Utah pro-mother scenario, where the police do everything in their power to protect the woman instead of protect the child or the children. That particular scenario would play out so many times in the future, as to why it is so many things have happened, and yet there's no evidence to back it up. Well, Utah makes sure that there's no evidence to back it up when it comes to a man trying to support and defend and protect his children. It seems to be just part of their education, or how to be a police officer or something in this state. It's biased, it's discriminatory, and it's sexist. All of those things which are illegal. It promotes child abuse, and prevents the accountability of child abusers. It shouldn't be the stance that a state would take when it comes to protecting children. So anyway, at that point, I had left the state of Utah the next day. The mother was out of jail the next day, and then we were out of state, where I told her upon her getting arrested in front of the cop and the police on video there, that we were leaving the state to go to my home state where our grandmother was, so that the kids could be safer and I could get some assistance. Then we proceeded out. It was a month and a half later, on August 27th, 2015, the mother had a court appointment for why she was arrested. At that point, she went to court about 10:30 in the morning. By approximately 7 p.m., my house in Duchesne County was burnt to the ground, or burnt down. I learned that only by a real estate investor that I had sent out to fund the divorce, which suggested that he was at the wrong house, because his house no longer is there, that it's been burned down. The police in Duchesne, or the fire department in Duchesne, when I asked them why it is that they didn't contact me or advise me that my house was burnt down, they said it's because it's not their responsibility to do that. I was in contact with Duchesne police and the courts almost daily there for a couple weeks. I requested a forensic interview, the first one of my children, and upon their ability to do a proper investigation, and so I gladly went and had that forensic interview done of my children and I at Grays Harbor County, Washington, in Montesano at CJC. I asked for emergency jurisdiction to be invoked in Washington and was denied. 4 months I spent in Washington with my children, only to learn that a Benton County, Washington judge, after spending approximately 10 hours in court, had told me at 9 o'clock at night that she was not going to uphold my protective order. In fact, she was going to dismiss my protective order and grant the mother one, because she couldn't validate the doctor reports, the counselor reports, the police videos, all of the evidence that I had brought with, because she could not validate that, because it was 9 o'clock at night. So instead, she chose and made a horrible decision to put my children in more danger and possibly risk the life of my children by placing the children back with the mother, in which in fact they turned out to have more abuse and neglect put on them after that. So then the children were returned to Utah, in which the court was proceeding in Utah. At that point, I had went to court in December, and then January I had the children 85% of the time. The court issued her 4 days, me 3 immediately. A month later we had 50-50, week on, week off, only to find out And if you can notice in the background, well, you can't notice, the camera's the other way, but I'll just put the camera this way real quick. So if you notice over there, that car, that's another one of the stalkers. So anyway, the time went to 50-50. I had engaged and utilized every piece of my my visitation with my children, to the excess of the fact that I had them 85% of the time. Several months later, the principal of the school where they were enrolled at school, approximately 500 South, near Redwood Road in Salt Lake City, the principal there had acknowledged, after I brought to her attention the fact that there were bruises on my children, there was skin falling from my son's ear, and the fact that my children identified that they did not take a bath for 5 days. Then the principal acknowledged the fact that she smelled human feces coming from my children. I asked her why, in fact, was it that there was no DCFS report made. She said sometimes there is and sometimes there's not, but that school just so happened to be infiltrated with 95% of the population and people that go to the school, and as well as the administration and teachers of the school are either Hispanic or major Hispanic supporters. And so for that reason, it's my belief that there was no action taken against the abuse and neglect. I then proceeded to remove the children as per the judge requested, that, or stated in the order, that if there was good reason to remove the children, then I had the say to do so. I had the right to do so. And so I removed the children because the school refused to admit, respond to, and notify agencies of the child abuse and neglect. So I enrolled them in a different school. At that point, the kids continued to be in my custody 85% of the time for the next year and a half to 2 years. Which at that point, the mother did not participate in the karate, did not participate in the schooling, the extra schooling, any school activities, any of the extra educational classes, reading and so forth, that I had personally been paying for extra tutoring. She participated in none of those. Instead, I had noticed that she was going to concerts and living up life in a nice way, which was fine with me because my children, I knew, then weren't getting abused, so it was not a big issue. December 2016, the mother signs over in a stipulation granting me full custody with two attorneys, her attorney, my attorney, and a mediator. Later, she would lie and say that she did not sign that. The attorney got very upset with me when I demanded that the mother of the children use her real proper name instead of the false alias name that she was trying to assume as her real name. The attorney got up in my face and said, when I told her, I said, you need to fix this. She got up out of her chair, came to me, put her finger in my face and said, "Fuck you, I ain't changing anything." At that point, I just told her to mail me the documents that the mother had signed, and I would later then turn them in, or have them reviewed. And so it was my intent to have them further reviewed by another attorney. Unfortunately, it cost me $7,500 with her, and had a vacation that I had to attend with my children coming up in June. So we'll start at the June vacation next. Thank you for watching, and I hope that this is educational, and it's meant to be educational for